Tehran's Shahed swarms are failing. Debris is raining down as these suicide drones are systematically ripped apart in mid-air. But it is not just conventional American missiles and CIWS cannons shredding the Shaheds. A US weapon that theoretically shouldn't even exist yet is vaporizing Iran's offensive assets instantly. This is a futuristic directed energy platform pulled straight out of a science fiction nightmare. It shouldn't exist, yet it does. And it is rendering the entirety of Iran's asymmetric arsenal obsolete. The laser war has officially begun, and the IRGC has absolutely no countermeasure. Now, before we declassify this sci-fi weaponry, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Titan Mechanics and ring the bell so you never miss a critical tactical briefing. Now, let's look at the intel. According to explosive reporting by the New York Post, a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer operating off the coast of the Middle East has been heavily modified with a weapon unlike anything ever deployed in combat. This is not a standard VLS cell. It is not a new iteration of the Phalanx CIWS that rattles off thousands of tungsten rounds per minute at incoming swarms. It is something infinitely more advanced. It is a highly classified control system that the Post identifies as the high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance, or Helios. There is a massive amount of classified data regarding this directed energy system, which we will deconstruct in just a moment, but the tactical headline is this: Helios is a fully operational marine-based directed energy weapon utilized by the US Navy to project lethal laser beams at drones and other aerial threats. These concentrated beams literally burn through their targets, physically destroying them in a fraction of a second, while simultaneously proving that the Pentagon no longer has to expend multi-million-dollar interceptor missiles to annihilate Iranian drones built for a fraction of that cost. This is a catastrophic body blow to Iran's collapsing military doctrine. Suicide drones and ballistic missile launches are literally all that Tehran has left. The US has systematically dismantled its conventional military infrastructure so comprehensively that an estimated 80% of the country's entire offensive capability has been wiped off the map, according to the Institute for the Study of War. Intelligence indicates Iran had lost 60% of its mobile missile launchers by March 12th. Roughly 80% of its strategic air defense networks have been obliterated, rendering the Iranian mainland almost completely defenseless against the relentless waves of US and Israeli ordnance penetrating its airspace daily. The Iranian regime desperately needed its Shahed drones to bleed American logistics. Now, Washington has deployed the ultimate infinite magazine countermeasure. What we know about the Helios architecture comes directly from its prime contractor, Lockheed Martin. The Helios is essentially a modular pod integrated directly into the superstructure of a warship, from which it projects high-energy laser fire at inbound bogies. These concentrated beams operate at a minimum of 60 kilowatts, with Lockheed Martin detailing that the destructive light is a spectral beam combined fiber laser. This specific technology is capable of instantly superheating and tearing through composite drone casings while simultaneously dazzling or permanently blinding the optical sensors and targeting viewfinders built into those munitions. Crucially, there is a terrifying degree of automation driving this system. Helios utilizes proven algorithms and high-powered optics to independently acquire, track, and prosecute its targets. This heavily suggests that the weapon system can operate autonomously, neutralizing threats faster than a human operator could even perceive them. The core doctrine appears to be, mount a Helios pod on a destroyer, power it up, and allow the AI to project lethal lasers at anything that violates the ship's airspace. The strategic advantages of this system are staggering, as Lockheed Martin explicitly outlined back in 2021. The Helios system's deep magazine, low cost per kill, speed of light delivery, and precision response enable it to address fleet needs now, and its mature, scalable architecture supports increased laser power levels to counter additional threats in the future. The defense giant declared, "Let's translate that corporate marketing speak. Helios costs literally pennies per shot. It can fire continuously for as long as the warship's nuclear or gas turbine generators produce electricity, and the architecture is designed to become exponentially more powerful in the near future." The New York Post adds that human-in-the-loop interaction is still possible, specifically regarding its steerable optical head. This indicates that Combat Information Center operators deep inside the warship can manually slew the laser pod toward a designated threat sector before handing control over to the automated algorithms to handle the micro-tracking and lethal firing sequence. From the perspective of the IRGC, this sounds like a terrifying bluff. But the Pentagon has the hard data to prove Helios is a fully operational combat reality, and the US might actually have a second distinct directed energy weapon active in the theater right now, which we will analyze in just a minute. Regarding the Helios validation, Naval News reported that the US Navy conducted live fire tests toward the end of 2024. That specific highly classified test saw the Navy attempt to engage a threat representative cruise missile directly from the deck of the USS Preble. Voyager's details remain heavily compartmentalized, as the Director of Operational Test and Evaluation's annual report confirmed the testing, but redacted the specific kill chain metrics. At a minimum, the Navy extracted vital telemetry on how Helios tracks and degrades a supersonic sea-skimming missile profile, data that Lockheed Martin is already using to upscale the system's output. The Navy Times provided additional context to that 2024 report, confirming the live fire test was definitively successful, though they noted the primary target was an advanced drone proxy rather than a full-scale cruise missile. Adding fuel to this, the New York Post reported that in early February, the Navy confirmed Helios had successfully engaged and incinerated 4 separate drone targets in a live combat environment. Returning to the Navy Times, they published a declassified photograph, reportedly pulled directly from the testing data, showcasing a massive, sustained streak of blinding white light projecting from the USS Preble. This visual provides a terrifying indication of the laser's sheer power. This is not a thin red pinpoint of light like a commercial laser pointer. It is a continuous blinding stream of superheated white-hot fury being unleashed from the exact class of destroyers that Iran is desperately trying to sink. The tactical reality is undeniable. Helios is operational, and according to multiple reports, it is actively vaporizing Iran's Shahed swarms. However, there are 2 massive intelligence caveats to this deployment. First, the Pentagon has maintained strict operational security and has not officially confirmed Helios is weapons-free in the Iranian theater. What we currently possess are high-resolution photographs of what analysts identify as a Helios pod mounted on a forward-deployed Arleigh Burke, corroborated by scattered unofficial combat reports. The second caveat is even more intriguing. It is entirely possible the system in the photos was misidentified, or more likely, Helios is actually operating in tandem with a completely different laser platform, doubling the futuristic firepower the US is projecting into the Persian Gulf. What is this second weapon? We will declassify it right now, but first, drop a like on this video if you want to see more deep dive analyses on classified US tech and share this intel with your squad. Now back to the laser warfare. The second directed energy system is known as Odin. In a mid-March intelligence brief, the New York Times reported that the initial assessments placing Helios off the coast of Iran might have been slightly inaccurate. The outlet cited Jared Keller, an expert on directed energy platforms, who analyzed the imagery shared by the New York Post and concluded the pod is actually the optical dazzling interdictor, Navy, or Odin. If Keller's assessment is accurate, we must analyze the Navy's tactical geometry in a completely different light. Odin is not a hard kill weapon like the Helios. It does not physically melt the drone. Instead, Odin projects a highly modulated laser beam specifically engineered to blind, disorient, and fry the electro-optical and infrared sensors guiding the inbound drone. The tactical objective is to scramble the munition's guidance logic, forcing it to veer wildly off course and ditch into the ocean far from its intended target. A permanently blinded drone is effectively neutralized, or at the very least forced into a predictable, degraded flight path, making it an effortless target for standard kinetic weapons like the Phalanx CIWS or SM-2 missiles. Army Recognition corroborated this deployment on March 2nd, analyzing combat footage from the opening hours of Operation Epic Fury. The footage, officially released by U.S. Central Command on February 28th, depicts an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer ripple-firing Tomahawk land attack missiles. But what is easily missed by the untrained eye is that an Odin laser system appears to be actively engaging targets simultaneously. on operating in a direct defensive support role while the destroyer conducts its offensive strike. The outlet notes that close-up examination of the Odin pod perfectly matches the profile of the system initially misidentified as Helios. This nuance changes the exact mechanism of the kill, but it does not change the strategic reality. The US is successfully utilizing directed energy to neutralize the Shahed swarms, while Odin doesn't vaporize the airframe, permanently blinding the drone's optics and frying its internal navigation is just as lethal. Furthermore, Odin possesses the terrifying capability to project glare into the cockpits of manned hostile aircraft. A sustained Odin beam can completely blind an enemy fighter pilot, making it physically impossible for them to execute an attack run or survive a dogfight. The Odin program was remarkably accelerated, transitioning from a whiteboard concept to a fully operational pod bolted onto the USS Dewey in just 2.5 years. Consequently, the US Navy possesses a dual-layered energy defense: Odin to blind and ditch the swarms, and potentially Helios to physically incinerate whatever leaks through. We would analyze Odin's effectiveness against Iranian fighter pilots, but frankly, American and Israeli air power has battered the Iranian Air Force so mercilessly that their aging jets are functionally a non-factor in Operation Epic Fury. But there is one final explosive twist to this directed energy war. Israel has reportedly entered the chat. The New York Post reports that unverified combat footage originating from the volatile Israel-Lebanon border depicts Hezbollah rockets being launched, only to spontaneously explode in mid-air just seconds into their flight path. The intercepts occur far too rapidly for a kinetic Tamir interceptor from the Iron Dome to acquire, launch, and strike the target. Military analysts widely attribute these instant kills to the combat debut of Israel's highly classified Iron Beam system. Iron Beam is designed specifically as the ultimate infinite magazine lower tier of Israel's multi-layered air defense network, and Iron Beam is an absolute monster. It boasts a staggering 100 kilowatt power output, significantly dwarfing the current unclassified Helios specs. Specifically, the Iron Beam architecture utilizes twin high-energy laser emitters, synchronized through an advanced air defense radar and a centralized command node. This dual laser configuration is an engineering marvel designed specifically to brute force its way through atmospheric disruptions, like heavy rain, fog, and cloud cover, and that typically refract, fragment, and defeat weaker laser beams. When functioning optimally, Iron Beam projects a hyper-concentrated shaft of pure energy, roughly the diameter of a quarter, straight through the titanium heart of an incoming rocket or drone. If the IDF has officially activated Iron Beam for the Iranian conflict, the IRGC now faces 3 distinct operational directed energy weapons. Officially, Israel maintains a stance of strategic ambiguity. According to the Jerusalem Post, the IDF officially stated that Iron Beam has not been utilized in the current Iranian conflict and remains in the final phases of operational testing. However, severe doubts surround that official denial. Classified intelligence leaked back in the fall of 2024 heavily suggested that prototype versions of the Iron Beam successfully engaged and incinerated over 40 Hezbollah drones, proving the core technology is highly lethal. It is highly probable the IDF pulled the system off the line for a massive hardware upgrade, or more likely, Israel is actively utilizing the silent invisible weapon to ambush Iranian munitions while denying Tehran the intelligence data that the system is fully operational. The fog of war is thick, but the speculation is completely justified. And as if facing a fleet of laser-armed destroyers wasn't catastrophic enough for Tehran, America's deployment of futuristic technology extends far beyond the atmosphere. The laser war is being directly supported by a newly ignited space war, an orbital battle space where Iran has zero capability to compete. The absolute future of kinetic warfare is happening right now. To understand this, we must look at a chilling statement made by President Trump during the opening phase of Operation Epic Fury. He publicly declared that US and Israeli forces possess the capability to detect and obliterate an Iranian ballistic missile launch site within exactly 4 minutes of the missile leaving the tube. How is a 4-minute kill chain physically possible? The Allied air campaign has so thoroughly devastated Iran's missile infrastructure that the IRGC is reduced to shoot and scoot tactics, wheeling mobile launchers out of deep bunkers, firing, and frantically attempting to hide them again. To execute a strike within 240 seconds, the Pentagon requires an omnipresent instantaneous detection grid, and they have exactly that, operated by the United States Space Force. According to Dr. Brent Ziernick, a former professor at the Space Force program at Johns Hopkins University, speaking to the New York Post, the U.S. tracks these mobile launchers using classified constellations of early warning satellites equipped with hypersensitive infrared sensors designed specifically to detect the massive thermal bloom of a rocket ignition. This orbital overwatch provides a dual capability. Why? Defensively, they can spot the missiles and pinpoint where the launchers are. Ziernick notes, the missiles can be intercepted and destroyed, often with Patriot PAC-3s. Field forces get notified that an attack is coming, so they can go to shelters or bunkers. Hundreds of Iranian ballistic missiles have already been swatted out of the sky using this exact thermal tracking architecture. But offensively, this is where the 4-minute kill chain is executed. The US is utilizing these same orbital infrared sensors to instantly geolocate the exact coordinates of the thermal bloom on Iranian soil. That coordinate data is immediately data linked to orbiting stealth fighters or forward deployed guided missile destroyers, which launch a kinetic strike at the launch site before the IRGC crew even has time to pack up their equipment. While Ziernick did not explicitly name the classified satellite constellation, the Sky Defender architecture is the prime suspect. This highly classified network fuses ground-based radar with space domain awareness, operating in conjunction with Thales Alenia space arrays to detect and track hypersonic and ballistic threats. One of these orbital infrared sensors can detect a launch and calculate the point of origin before the missile even breaches the horizon to appear on traditional ground-based radar. Furthermore, advanced artificial intelligence algorithms are reportedly being utilized to instantly parse the raw thermal data, triangulate the exact launch coordinates, and automatically cue the closest American strike asset. The launch is detected, the AI calculates the firing solution, a Tomahawk or a JDAM is released, and another IRGC missile crew is instantly wiped off the map. The strategic culmination of all this data presents a brutal, unavoidable reality for Tehran. The laser wars and the space wars have simultaneously commenced, and the Iranian military does not possess a single piece of hardware capable of surviving this technological onslaught. The deployment of Odin, Helios, and potentially Iron Beam provides a terrifying glimpse into the absolute future of anti-swarm combat. What defense contractors promised for decades is now a lethal reality, actively paralyzing Iran's entire asymmetric drone doctrine. Tehran desperately needed its Shaheds to bypass American air defenses and inflict enough casualties to shatter Washington's political will to sustain Operation Epic Fury, but directed energy weapons fire at the literal speed of light. And economically, the math is devastating for Iran. While the US will continue to use kinetic interceptors when necessary, lasers are the ultimate endgame. The New York Times estimates a high-energy laser shot costs roughly $3.50 in diesel fuel to generate the electricity. Conversely, firing a single Patriot PAC-3 interceptor costs the Pentagon well over $3 million. To put that in perspective, a Helios system can physically incinerate over 857,000 Shahed drones before the US Navy spends the equivalent cost of launching one single Patriot missile. The logistical math is insurmountable. We are actively witnessing the absolute future of warfare being pioneered over the Persian Gulf. If the Pentagon deploys additional Helios and Odin pods, and Israel officially unleashes the 100-kilowatt Iron Beam, Iran's entire drone-based strike strategy will instantly evaporate. Between the start of the campaign and March 11th alone, Iran launched roughly 2,100 drones, hoping to bankrupt American missile reserves. That entire strategy of asymmetric economic warfare just went up in smoke. It's literally vaporized by a $3.50 beam of light. In merely 2 weeks, we have watched the United States fundamentally rewrite the rules of modern combat. Lasers and AI-driven orbital tracking grids are granting Washington absolute uncontested supremacy. But this is not the first time American engineering has broken the paradigm of aerial warfare. Back in the 1950s, the US unleashed a heavily classified weapon that permanently altered the skies. Find out exactly what that weapon was, and why its legacy is dominating the airspace over Iran right now in our dedicated historical breakdown video. Sound off in the comments below. Do you think laser weapons make traditional missiles obsolete? Smash that like button, subscribe to Titan Mechanics, and we'll see you on the next tactical briefing.